if you ask yourself, why do I have this cycle or this negative behavior? It's serving you. It's serving you some way. And you might even be thinking it's serving you well. But ask yourself the question, like, do I have to beat myself up and not be satisfied and not be happy in order to keep pushing for a bigger life? And probably your answer is no.
Welcome to the Raquel Show. This show is for entrepreneurs who want to play bigger in business and in life. And today I have a very special guest who I have known for several years and has flourished throughout the years as I've seen her continue to grow, lead different people, brokerages, all the things. She's the head of industry for Place, which supports agents and partners from a variety of brokerage brands across the US and in Canada, over 100 unique markets. She's the founder of Vija Real Estate and is powered by Place. She co-founded a national women's group that holds annual events for top female business leaders. And she currently hosts Wednesday webinars called Power Playbooks. And she's a wife, she's a mother. She has a lot of experience when it comes to real estate. And even through all the different market cycles, she's been able to be a forward thinker in our industry. And I've always looked up to her. And I'm so excited to have this conversation. So welcome to the show, Vija Williams.
Thank you. That is like, you made me sound so great. Thank you.
You are. And she is a badass. And all of you guys that are listening, I'm like, you guys are probably saying, wow. So let's just dive in. You live a really big life. You lead multiple companies, leaders. You're a mom. How do you navigate through it all? And I know that you also have that knack of wanting to do more without sacrificing the things that matter to you, like health, family, and happiness.
Well, first of all, I do sacrifice those things. No person can have it all, and no person can do it all. And so, I appreciate that the optics might look that way. Like, that's great. And also, I don't do it all, and something does get. See, here's my philosophy on that. Life is not balance; it's balancing. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's a verb, and I do find, in myself and certainly in other people, on my teams over the years or that I've coached and mentored, that they get very fixated on a day being balanced. Like, how can I have a life where every day is balanced? And I don't think that way. I think more in terms of, I'm a longer range thinker, more in terms of, months, quarters, seasons. Years sometimes where, if I know a year is going to be out of balance. One example that just popped into my head, because I do have 3 kids, I have a husband and 3 kids. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I left being a real estate, having a real estate team to working for Ben Kinney back in 2018, working for him he had owned the real estate office I was in, but I went to be an employee, to be the president of his brokerages at the time. And I just knew I was going to have a massive learning curve. And I just know myself. And I knew that I was going to work a ton of hours. That's just how I operate. I think a lot of us operate that way with a new thing. So I sat the family down and, we had a family meeting, and I just said, this is going to feel like an out of balance year. And I just kind of want to address it. I want to talk about, we're going to add in a couple of vacations. I've already talked to Ben about that, I'm going to rely on those times to connect with you guys. And, I'm going to do my best. I want us to be really purposeful about having one-on-one time every week. And, and at the time, my kids they're 22, 19, and 13. So we go back, 5 years, they were whatever that age is. And I certainly didn't abandon my kids. I know that doesn't sound like I did, but, I brought them in on it. And I've done that my whole career, right? My family's they're very aware of what mom's doing, what it's bringing to the table, very aware that the hours I put in are by choice, that they're a passion. And I love what I do. I feel like it's a vocation, not an occupation. And so I do think I sacrifice some of that, but, in being intentional and purposeful, I can kind of, acknowledge and own who I am and how I'm wired and incorporate that into my lifestyle. Right. So I think that's probably my long-winded answer.
Yeah. Speaking of like balancing, I mean, you said a lot in that, right? And so balancing, there is no such things as balance, right? It's a verb. How do you prioritize time and set boundaries, knowing what you've known? Because it's been a journey, right? And you've taken different roles and you've sat them down. And I'm sure there's things that, as you look back, that was a lesson that maybe you could even also share with some of our audience that are listening today that are dealing with, trying to manage it all.
Oh, I love that question. It's a very timely question for me because I'm kind of in a rebalancing right now as we speak. So it's probably not coincidental that the conversation went there pretty fast, right? Because I find life's like that. But so a couple things on that. Number one, we don't get to sacrifice our families for our, any vocation that we do. That's just not acceptable. But do we? The question is, do we? And the answer is yes, we do. I certainly do, right? And we've all gone through, periods of time in real estate where we look back and go, oh, I got a little too caught up and, the business was flowing and I couldn't say no. And the hours just went by. And next thing I know, there's weeks and a spring season that's gone by. I know there's people listening that are like cringing, I'm the same. I think a lot of us are kind of wired that way. So one good example is I really got to a point in my life. And I don't know if this is healthy or not. I can only share, about me, where I became, really aware that there was only going to be two major things that I could really focus on in a year. I want to preface it by saying those two things were not my only things. It's not like there weren't a myriad of things I was doing and addressing and giving some focus on, but the two big things. And so this year, one of them is personal. It's been years since 2018, actually, since I came to work for Ben, it's just been so heavy work balance. And so one good example, if I'm going to be transparent today,
of course,
is I've been traveling 50% of the time for my new role. And I just had to start putting some boundaries on that. So I sat the kids down. That I'm so blessed that my two boys came home again this summer. They were not supposed to come home, either of them. This is definitely my last summer with my whole family together. My son's graduating next year from college. Like, I guarantee you there will not be another summer where all five of us will be together, like the whole summer. So I took the boys out to dinner. Not Zoe, not my daughter, took the boys out to dinner, and I apologized to them. And I said, I look back on the last 5 years and I realized there were probably times where I focused on work, to your detriment. And I want to apologize to you for that. And I also want to share that here we are today. It's a beautiful day. We're having dinner together. I'm so excited about this summer. And this is what I'm going to do this summer. And I want to get your buy-in on this. And I actually created it with our mutual friend Spring. We were on a plane together a couple of weeks ago, and I created it. She helped me a little bit on it, but I created a mom boot camp this summer. And so every day, it's kind of like a 75 hard for 75 days. Everyone reads 10 pages a day, all these things on it. And what I said to the boys is I realize now that I've traveled all over the country to speak and people seek me out to coach and consult with me. And I realized I haven't done that with you. That all these people are getting the best of me. And I haven't parlayed those lessons to you guys. And what I want you to know is my gift to you is this summer, once a week, we're going to spend about an hour together out in our deck. And you're going to have some mama lessons. And I think you're going to laugh and make fun of me. And I think you're going to complain about it because your sports event's on. But I think you're going to look back and you're going to be really grateful for that time. And I know I'm going to be grateful that I, was kind of able to share some of my deeply held beliefs and values and lessons that I've learned in life, and gave them each a notebook. And that's what we're doing. And so we're going through sort of 12 principles that I kind of pulled together that I want my kids to know. Hand chose books for them that they would never read. I'm bribing them a little bit. So, it's things like that. So I'm definitely in a rebalancing right now for that. Health would also be something to add. I've lost 50 pounds since December. I have another 50 to go. So,
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for being authentic, for being so transparent. Like, I was like shaking my arms for those that are listening and maybe watching on YouTube, because I got chills, right? Like, you made me tear up, and I was like trying to hold back my tears because I totally understand and get it. Right. And it was not too long of a thought where I had those thoughts too of like, dang, people get the best of me. And I only have a few more summers with my kids.
Yes.
Right. So and I have taken that seat back, but it took a realization of me traveling on a plane every single week. And one day I looked up and I was like, I only got 5 more years with Bryce. And now it's 1 more year. Right. So
Amazing, Raquel. Like it goes so fast. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what's one lesson? And I think that's a beautiful thing of what you're doing this summer. What's one lesson you hope your sons would get out of this?
Yeah. And Zoe too, I think that one of the most important principles in my life that's really made me an internally happy person is the concept of being focused on the process of your life, not the outcome. And it's interesting because I'm a Christian, but that's a Buddhist philosophy, and it's changed my life. And so that's where we're going to start. We're going to weave it the whole summer, but just, leaning in on your day, on your week, on your month, leaning in on what you can control, your activities, your self-growth, right? Your personal growth and all of that. And having an outcome in mind, always have an outcome in mind and understanding, what you want, what your vision is, but really putting the pressure and allowing yourself to have wins on process-driven activities, on leading activities, right? That's probably the most important concept that I could teach my kids, I think, as far as, being successful. Like there's some spiritual concepts and everything, but that was the one that jumped out because it's going to be my first one. From a pragmatic life process, all of us could take that advice. That is, if you lean in and you allow yourself to say, I've won the day based on my activities, and I've reverse engineered my outcomes in mind to understand that these are the right activities, which, by the way, that takes time, right? That it takes time to understand, are these the right activities? Like if we're going to use you as an example, and me too, you're like, look, I don't know that being on a plane every week is the right activity. Mm-hmm. You might have thought it was. Well, that's okay. That's okay. We can recalibrate. We have grace with ourselves. We just serenely, calmly, and say, hey, I'm learning as I go. And you know what? I only have to be on a plane once a month.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That is. And so that pops out as one example.
There's a lot of things that I find with entrepreneurs, especially our top performing entrepreneurs. And there's a lot that listen on the show, that there's always opportunities that come about. How do you continue to stay present and focus and not get distracted from the bright and shiny objects that could potentially lead to burnout later on?
Well, I love that question. And the fact that you asked it tells me that you have a lot of opportunities coming your way, as do most successful people. And it's our downfall when we don't stay focused. And, I'm not saying that we don't all, follow the squirrel sometimes. We do all do that. But, the top 5 people I've hung out with over the last 5 years, Ben Kinney is like, right behind my family is right there. Definitely top 5. And his superpower, and what I've just come to realize being so involved with him and, just so many hours a day and week and a month with him, is that he is just so laser focused and does not get distracted. He could have the best deal come in front of him, and if it's not in alignment with, what the goal is and what the vision is, he will ignore it. The best deal in the world, he'll ignore it because it's not in alignment on the path that he's on. So I think that, my answer to that is being clear on, constantly clear on goals and outcomes that you want, and making sure they're the right ones. A lot of self-reflection, and it really boils down, Raquel, it really boils down to making sure that all of us have enough thinking time in our days and enough self-reflection time in our days, because clarity is hard.
Yeah, 100%. It's so much easier to say what you don't want in life versus when you ask people, what do you really want in life? That's a hard question for a lot of people to answer, right? They'll go back to what they don't want first because it's so much easier. There was a few weeks ago and a few months ago, I got to hear you speak about the upper limit, and it really hit home. Right. And I think it hit home in a different way for me as I coach more and more entrepreneurs. So for those that are unfamiliar with it, or that may be getting stuck, could you explain to our audience, like, what that upper limit, because I just loved how you did it.
Yeah. The upper limit problem, it was a game changer for me about a year ago, literally a game changer. And it kind of cascaded a whole bunch of personal growth. Do you guys ever go through, I don't know, Raquel, do you go through moments where you kind of go through seasons of intense personal growth and then it kind of lays back a little bit? Oh yeah. So I've definitely,
Yes.
yeah. Right. And it kind of go in verse a little bit, like just like the sky's open so I've kind of been in one of those lately. So I am very reflective these days, so the upper limit problem, I was on a coaching call about a year ago with one of my coaches, and there was this really big thing that we've been talking about for months. And we're about 10 minutes into the call. I go, oh, by the way, I did that thing. It's happening. And she said, wait, what? We've been talking for 10 minutes. What are you talking about? I go, yeah, I forgot to tell you. She's like, hold on. This is the thing we've been talking about for months, like your lifelong dream. You're telling me that just happened. And this is how you're telling me. I go, yeah. Uh-huh. And and we were on Zoom and she just kind of paused and stared at me. And she's like, have you ever heard of an upper limit problem? And that's how I learned about it. So an upper limit problem is that we as humans are actually not seeking success, even though we think we are. What we're really seeking is our comfort zone. We're really seeking comfort and security. So we all have an invisible thermostat, call it 70 degrees. Mm-hmm. And subconsciously, we are calibrating to be at that comfort zone. Call that your comfort temperature. So when you go below it, the good news is that, you're having a bad real estate year or whatever it is, and you have a financial thermostat, you'll probably rally and hustle enough to get right on up there, to get back to that 70 degrees. But the flip side is also true. You get up to 80, 90 degrees. So let's say you've always made $100,000 as a real estate agent. You have this year, you're on a trajectory to go to 200. You will most likely sabotage that, or you'll hit it and be really flat and not excited, not really know how to process it. Like when I talk to my coach, there's a whole bunch of things that happen. And the real reason, what's really happening is that you are sabotaging your own success because you can't see, feel, smell, hear yourself in a new identity. You don't see yourself as a $250,000 real estate agent, so you will always stay at $100,000. But the fascinating thing about it, Raquel, is that you could hit 200,000 in income that year, and you'll keep making income, but then you'll go gain 100 pounds. Or you'll go max out all your credit cards, right? Sometimes what we do is we sabotage in other areas as like a compensation. Like we're tangentially aware enough about it with the income to know, no, I got to push through, but we're subconscious to the fact that I got to eat ice cream every night to comfort myself.
Yeah, because it's so uncomfortable. Mm-hmm.
It's so uncomfortable. And so working through that limit is really what I teach. And that's more time. We don't have probably enough time to go into that now. And there's a great book that the guy who created this is called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. There's also, if you're on, I listen to my podcast on Spotify. So if you're on Spotify, you can just literally search on podcast Upper Limit Problem. He's a guest on a lot of podcasts. You could listen to a lot of things about it like I did. I read a ton of articles, but I will say the biggest lesson that's come from that kind of actually led me to go on a kind of a really intense personal growth retreat a couple of weeks ago, is that I came to realize that I did not have the capacity to be happy and receive the joyness and the fruits of my labor for a long period of time. That I immediately went into discontentment, like more. This isn't enough, like to push myself. And I had to kind of work through a process of, well, why do I keep doing that? And I realized why I kept doing that is that subconsciously I felt like I needed that edge in order to continue to push myself. What my behavior was I realized that I was like, well, if I don't have that, attitude, then I'll just be complacent and I won't push to be a $250,000 agent, right? If we're using that example. What I realized is I can be kind to myself, be super happy, super grateful, super content, and still push myself. And I just had to work through that. A lot of you are probably resonating with this because I think this is a common thing where if you ask yourself, why do I have this cycle or this negative behavior? It's serving you. It's serving you some way. And you might even be thinking it's serving you well. But ask yourself the question, like, do I have to beat myself up and not be satisfied and not be happy in order to keep pushing for a bigger life? And probably your answer is no. Like, I don't have to do that. I can think of other ways to do it. Right. And so the upper limit problem has been a game changer for me. Absolute game changer. I have burst through more ceilings this last year, just with the simple awareness of that than ever.
I love that you shared that, first of all, because I think a lot of our listeners, especially in real estate, they kind of hit that upper limit problem, or they go stagnant after that 250. I see it a lot more probably as they're getting closer to that $1 million mark. It's like they stay stuck for a little bit, and it either comes in many, many forms, whether it's leadership style, whether it's skill style, whether it's credit cards, like you said, blowing it out like I have more than enough. But I think it's just so important to touch on it. And I love that you went through your own personal journey, because that takes a lot of self-awareness. And you talked about even being reflective and making sure that you have that space to have that self-awareness, because not everybody, until something happens, I think is where that starts to open up. Is there a process, or do you have any like go-to questions? Because I know that I take my Monday mornings of like not taking meetings to really like think about self-reflection and think about, what do I want to do that lights me up and what really truly brings me joy?
I love that. So first of all, I love that you have a regular cadence, and I would start there. Most real estate agents have the opportunity to do that. I'm a senior leader in a rapid growth environment company place. And so I have to figure out how to build this into my life structurally daily. I don't have the luxury to kind of take off once a quarter to go, to a yoga retreat once a quarter. You know what I mean? Like, I just can't do that for a week. And so I did just do it. And I think yearly I can, and I do. Last year I went to Patagonia. This year I went to Costa Rica. But my cadence is most mornings, and there's always exceptions, but almost every morning I just do it in the morning. And I have a ton of questions. Couple things. It's not easy, but starting to journal, when you start noticing something is bothering you or hindering you, or you might be sabotaging yourself, I want to first start with saying, if you're beating yourself up and you're judging yourself and there's self-loathing involved, that's your first process to get over. Start viewing yourself as just like, oh, I'm noticing I'm doing this. So my self-talk now is like, oh, I'm noticing I feel jealous when I see that. I'm noticing I feel really angry when I hear that, and I've worked on that for a while, kind of being my own witness. So that's number one. Number two, in that state, I do journal a lot of things. Like, I have a trigger list actually, and I go off and on that list, but it's just on my iPhone notes. But if something's like stirring me up, during the course of the day or something, I'll probably jot it down on the trigger list. And it's fascinating, by the way, the patterns that emerge, what triggers you, right? And then when you start seeing those patterns, you can start saying, okay, well, this is an area of my life that I'm either not getting a need met or I need to work on, right? And this might all sound very deep and airy-fairy, but it's been a massive reason for my professional success. My personal growth has been commensurate with my professional success. So
inner work affects everything, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about.
What I'm talking about. And then I just use that, to study. So, right now I'm studying a particular subject, but there have been times, Raquel, where like I went like a couple of years studying communication. I mean, sometimes it's like super tactical. That's kind of how I know what I need to work on. Right. So
good. So speaking of upper limit, speaking of like self-reflection, the market, you said you live a really, you're a leader of a very fast growing company and support probably a lot of different people, from agents to leaders. What do you think in this market today? Let's talk real estate. What do you think takes in today's market? Does it take to be like successful? And where do you see it like going from like solo agents to teams to brokerages or platforms? I know that's a loaded question, but I know that if there's one person that is in the right rooms, it's this woman that you're listening to.
I say this, humbly. I don't know anyone who talks to as many real estate teams as me, barring like 5 of my colleagues, because my job is to talk to the top teams in the nation. So if you look at the top 50 teams, I'm probably talking to 20 of those, to just pick a number in the world. And then, and then their referrals. So I'm on every single day I'm meeting with teams. So a couple things. If you're an agent, I think we're in an era, I would never start in real estate not going on a team. I would never advise a new agent at this point to start, even if, by the way, you're allowed to end up as a solo agent. You're allowed to go start your own team. I would start on a team. That's number one. And I want to encourage you, agents, if you didn't pick the right one the first time around, it doesn't mean all teams aren't the right one. Go find the right one, right? Go find the right one. But that's from an agent perspective. Number two, agents have got to learn to lead generate. And that can look different for different things, but we are back in a market where that's necessary. And even in the frothy market we had in, kind of 2020 into 2021, beginning of 22, those who knew how to lead generated tripled their business. So there's never a downside to that. So you've got to embrace that you're in a sales profession and houses happen to be your product.
Yeah. Lead flow is so important in any business.
Team operators. We touched on this at the event you guys that you and I were both at, and I see it all, but the number one problem and challenge that real estate teams have today, end of story, is per agent productivity. Said another way, it's getting every agent on your team to sell, whatever your number is, 2 homes a month or whatever it is, so that they are making a great living for themselves, so that you're getting production out of it. The number one problem to solve is that. What most teams come to me thinking their problem is recruiting. Now, I'm not saying that's number two. That's number two. It's very important. We have to recruit, and we have got to simultaneously, I'm not saying to pull off the gas on that if you're a team leader hearing this, but per agent productivity is everything. How do you launch an agent into producing quickly and keep him there? It is not just lead flow. That's the biggest challenge I see, because that leads us into the biggest expense problem I see. Number one expense problem, period, end of story, is cost of sale, is our splits, what we pay out to our agents. So the challenge is, if your agents are fed and they're selling 2, 3, 4 homes a month, maybe, but they're all doing that on your company leads, the challenge is, if your average payout is say 60%, 65%, and let's say your expenses are 25%, you're at a 10% profit. Yeah. It's just not good. That's just not acceptable. So the problem is getting that cost of sale on a blended average. You can have different splits, but on a blended average, to try to not exceed 50%. Well, then you have, 20, 25% expenses. There you go. You're at 20, 25% profit margin, right? Mm-hmm. So agents not seeing that cost of sale as income is the biggest problem. They don't look at their top line revenue minus cost of sale. They're just looking at their gross profit coming in and saying, well, that's how much I make. I met with an agent, a really large team the other day, who was at a $3 or $4 million GCI commission. And I asked, what's your commission? And they said 1.4 or something, whatever it was. And I was like, and I realized that they weren't even recognizing the top line revenue. So the problem we run into with teams is that you're just not leaving yourself room. You're just saying, well, any money's extra money. That's the, the wording you're saying to yourself. I would say that you can have a super awesome, healthy team. That's what really we do at Place. Our teams are awesome. And every single agent on our Place teams lead generate. So they lead generate and they get company leads. And together, by doing that, you can blend your cost of sale to make it really doable and make yourself really, have really nice nets.
I love how you broke it down. And I'm sure some of the people that are listening, and you talk, like you said, you're talking to 20 of the top 50 people in our industry. What do you think separates them from everybody else?
Yeah, that is a great question. First of all, what pops into my head first, every single, and I'm kind of going through a slideshow right now, like a mental slideshow. They are executors. At the end of the day, I think if I had to choose one thing, and there's more than one thing, but if I had to choose one thing, I look at Ben, I look at Spring Benson, I look at Eric Hatch, I look at Veronica Figueroa. I just flew back from Veronica's team. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, they are not scared to just go and do it and fail and course correct and do it again. I think that's really the fundamental difference. There are other things. I will say that all of those guys have a very clear idea of who they are. They're very self-aware. When I talk to that group of people, they all kind of come to the table with different skill sets, but they just know themselves. and are super clear at how they have to build an organization around themselves. You can speak very directly to all the top guys and gals. I mean, it's just, it's interesting to me. I also think they're all really hard workers, and they don't use their time that starts getting freed up as they grow their organizations. They don't use that to eat bonbons and watch TV. They're all using that to build their empire in different directions. Some of it's mortgage, some of it's coaching, some of it's the revenue share organizations, but whatever it is, some of it's real estate investment, divisions in their company, whatever it is, they're all growing, expanding their organizations, which what that does is it creates a massive world for their people. So, Ben Kinney, great example. As his team started growing, I mean, there was a point where financially he was set for life, but he now had an organization of like 50 people at the time, 100 people, 150, 200 people. And, at a certain point, people like Vija are going to go somewhere for a bigger opportunity. He's like, no, wait, stay. I'm going to build that opportunity. That's what that's what he did for all of us. So I think all of these top leaders have that in common. But if you're getting started and you're like, God, I'm not that person yet, my encouragement to you is you'll get there. If you're a doer and an executor, and you're kind of in the beginning stages of building a team, just stay with that. In fact, could I add one more thing?
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest things I notice. In fact, if there is ever a lesson for anyone to hear, it would be this. Anybody, whether you're an agent, whether you're a W-2 employee like me, and I'm also an entrepreneur, but my primary gig is I'm an employee. Whether you're a team operator, one of the biggest things I notice with people who stop the trajectory of success is they get to a point, and it must be ego. I don't know what it is. If it's laziness, ego, I don't know what it is. I don't think they're aware of it, where they stop being willing to do the work of the stage they're at. Mm-hmm. And they think they can skip stairs. And sometimes in our growth, we feel like we're going backwards, and it's very humbling. And the leaders who accept that, hey, this is what life is giving me now, and I'm going to do the work necessary for myself, to put food on my table. There's a lot of very powerful teams right now making decisions that they didn't have to think, they didn't think they would make, but they're doing it. The ones that won't make it and that I see not making it, they're trying to skip that step, and they'll stop, and they will most likely fail.
Which leads me to my next question, because you talked about execution. They probably execute really fast. They have self-awareness. How important do you think is leadership? Because I see top producers, they can execute really well, but when they start to build a team, their team never stays, right? And you've probably seen that. How do you think leadership plays, especially in today's market, where some of them haven't experienced the last cycle and the last downturn? How do you think that plays into the success of their team and their growth moving forward?
Well, I think it's relevant to the last conversation. And what I mean is that I've been around enough, even for myself. I've definitely gone through this. I've talked to Ben and Chris Suarez about this before. Just was with Veronica Figueroa. I just talked to her about it. Everybody goes through growth curve with leadership. We do not all become great leaders overnight. Everybody goes through, I don't want to say a bad word on your podcast, but I call it.
You can totally be as transparent as you want. So won't be the first.
Journey, everybody goes through their asshole stage of leadership. That is just the, I went through whatever, like my team, like Veronica was just kind of acknowledging that, like everybody looks back at a certain point and goes, gosh, I was a horrible leader. Right. And I just want to, give you grace if you're going, you have to go through that. Like literally you have to go through that to become a good leader, which maybe you don't. I don't know. In my observation, you do. That everyone has to kind of go through some kind of a crisis of leadership. So that has to do with execution. There has to just be a willingness to jump in and be bad at it till you're good at it. That's number one. But number two, I will say, if I took the top 20 team operators that I know, and these are teams that are so large, they're bigger than many brokerages, right? Including Ben and Chris, and including a lot of people I'm not mentioning. I will say this, they all come at it with different leadership styles. I don't know that every one of them is the same. Some of them are charismatic and really great with people, some are not. But the commonality is that every single one of them knows who is important and pivotal in their world and they actively love and show that they love their people. And I use the word love on purpose. I like the word love in business, whether it's intentional or not. They love on and love and care for and show that they love and care for the appropriate people. Now, some people are just wired, that's a large group of people. Some people are not. Some people, it's one or two people, that's it. But whatever that is, that's the commonality, and so, like I said, some are more practitioners. Like some of these team leaders they don't even like being with people. Mm-hmm. Some of them are so charismatic, they'll walk in a room and there's a crowd of 30 people around them. That differs.
Yeah. And you're one, like you said, that talks to a lot of people, and there's a variety, I think, of leadership styles and skill sets. What do you think in today and what you're looking for? You look for lots of different types of partnerships, opportunities. What do you look for in a leader today when it comes to a strategic partnership for you guys?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a couple ways to answer that. I think of Patrick Lencioni, Hungry, Humble, and Smart. That is definitely us at Place. We are by nature humble people. I think the biggest comment I get is, you're all so nice. And that really kind of is our culture. We're a little more understated that's just our company culture. But I'll use this question to answer another kind of related question, which is what is the most important aspect of leadership in my mind, or at the least, where do I see people struggle the most with leadership?
Yeah.
And that is for sure that really good leaders set the standard and show their people how to win. That is where we all fall down the most. Like if you ask yourself, whenever someone's failing in your organization, whether if you have a team, whether it's an agent, staff members, you're frustrated with staff members, they're frustrated with you, whatever it is, I get 90% chance what you're not doing is sitting them down often, by the way, and saying, hey, I want to be clear on what I expect of you and what the standard is and what I know you need to do to be successful here. And this is what I need for you to be successful. And are we clear on this? Are we clear on the standards? And do you understand what you have to do and everything? And then to follow up on that, checking in with them often, basically, giving them feedback. Hey, you're winning or you're losing. I mean, that's a pretty harsh way to say it. I wouldn't say it that way, but, but inspecting what we expect often. Right. And so almost always, though, leaders are falling down, including myself. I'm not excluding myself, but almost every single time when I'm coaching or consulting someone, I can tell you they've fallen down on not setting the standard.
Yeah. Couldn't agree with you more. You've talked a lot about leadership. You've got a lot of opportunities. You speak to a lot of different leaders. I always love these conversations. What do you think's next for Vija?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. And I don't feel obligated to know. I know that, I'm on the stair that I'm on, kind of going back to something we talked about a while ago. I am very focused on my number one focus this year is what I'm doing at Place, my specific, what my directives are in this role. And beyond that, I don't know. I'm okay with not knowing.
Yeah. And I love that because that is a very powerful statement that you just said. And I don't think a lot of people know that is that when you don't know, a lot of people are not comfortable with that. And you just said it. I'm super comfortable. What are you excited about outside of like business or work? What are you most excited about?
That's an easy. I'm really excited about some projects that I'm starting to do to just I've kind of stifled my creative content deliver. I haven't been teaching and training, and I haven't really had fun with that over the last, year and a half as I did before, and just because I was all in on a new role. I started at Place about a little over a year ago. So that's kind of been all encompassing. And I'm just like, okay, I don't need, now I understand it now. And so I am really excited to go. I just want to teach and speak and maybe even start a little coaching again. And I'm super excited about going back to that. I miss it.
By the way, I have to tell you, you were one of the best teachers. And the way I met you was going to your office and touring it. I don't even know if you remember. It was mine and Jenny's very first trip that we went outside of the office together, because usually she's always back and I usually travel. And it was one of our fundamentals that we always talk about, a memory that we always talk about that changed the trajectory of our partnership together in growing different things.
Thank you.
So I hope you do teach because I think you're a phenomenal teacher.
I thank you. I'm working on some things. So I'm excited. Yeah.
Yay. Where can people connect with you?
Vija.com is my website. Isn't that cool? Vija.com. I have my own name. That's new. Ben Kinney bought it for me. So it was a very good gift. And you can just get on there, via@place.com. Super easy to remember. Vija@place.com. Yeah.
And as we wrap up, there's always one question that I love asking all of our guests on the show is, what does Vija do to play bigger in business or in life?
What do I do well, I believe that business growth and life growth is autobiographical. So what I mean by that is I believe all of the time I put into personal growth and personal joy and, personal fulfillment will in turn, the outcome will be, that's the process for me. And the outcome will be success. It's always been success. And the more developed I am personally, and the more I grow personally, the more my income has grown, the more my net worth has grown, the more my success in my roles has grown. So I would just say that the more quote unquote successful I become, ironically, the more time I put in reading and growing and listening to things, which I don't have more time. So that means from a percentage standpoint, it's becoming more and more of a commitment, not less.
Love that. I super appreciate you, Vija. Like I said earlier, I highly respect you, admire you. You're such an inspiration. I want to keep cheering you on to play bigger, my friend, because you were meant to impact this world in a really, really big way.
Thank you. And you too. It has been so cool to watch your journey and to watch your success. And I am one of your biggest cheerleaders, clapping for you as well. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. I feel the same. Super mutual. And thank you so much.